China is doing it again. After building a 4,500 kilometers Great Green Wall to hold back their own desert, they are now taking on the Sahara. The Sahel region of Africa faces an environmental crisis of massive proportions. Every year, the Sahara Desert expands southward by an alarming rate, consuming 1.5 million hectares of once productive land. This is not just an environmental problem. It triggers food shortages, forces communities to relocate, and intensifies conflicts over dwindling resources. In 2007, the African Union launched an ambitious response, the Great Green Wall Initiative. This 8,000-kilometer living barrier would stretch across the entire width of Africa, from Senegal in the west to Djibouti in the east. Initially, many pictured this as a simple line of trees, 15 kilometers wide, marching across the continent. But the vision quickly evolved into something more sophisticated. Instead of just planting trees, the initiative began focusing on a mosaic of sustainable land management projects tailored to local conditions. Because desertification is not simply about sand dunes advancing. It's about complex interactions between human activities, fragile ecosystems, and changing climate patterns. The goals became more ambitious. Restore 100 million hectares of degraded land, capture 250 million tons of carbon, and create 10 million jobs by 2030. This was not just an environmental project anymore. It was a comprehensive development strategy with an $8 billion price tag. But progress has been painfully slow. By 2020, only 4% of the target area had been restored. The initiative stumbled against political instability, insufficient funding, and technical challenges of working in such harsh environments. Many countries failed to allocate any of their own budgets to the project, instead waiting for international funding that often never arrived. The security situation further complicated matters, with many restoration sites becoming too dangerous to access. What's become clear is that planting trees alone won't solve this crisis. So how does China fit into this picture? And what approaches might finally accelerate this stalled initiative? Over the next few minutes, we'll examine how Chinese technology is being applied in the Sahel, what motivates this partnership, and whether this collaboration between China and Africa offers real solutions to environmental challenges that affect hundreds of millions of people. Before getting involved in Africa's Great Green Wall, China waged its own decades-long battle against desert expansion. The Gobi Desert in northern China once threatened Beijing with massive sandstorms and destroyed farmland across 5 provinces. China's response was the 3 North Shelter Belt Forest Program, often called China's own Great Green Wall. If you'd like to know more about China's 3 North Shelter Belt Forest Program, check out our previous video. The link is in the description. This massive project transformed over 50,000 square kilometers of degraded land through systematic approaches combining both natural and technological solutions. Chinese forest coverage now exceeds 25% of the country's land area, making China the fastest and largest contributor to global greening efforts. Instead of simply planting trees in straight lines, Chinese scientists developed integrated systems tailored to specific local conditions. In the Taklamakan Desert, a massive arid region slightly smaller than Germany, they created ecological protection forests along highways that serve as green barriers. Scientists carefully selected drought-resistant species that can survive in harsh conditions with minimal water. They combined mechanical sand control with biological sand fixation measures. One innovative technique uses biodegradable nylon to create sand barriers that effectively stop sand movement. Water management proved crucial in these arid environments. Photovoltaic drip irrigation systems conserve precious water while using solar energy instead of fossil fuels. This addresses 2 environmental challenges simultaneously. But perhaps most importantly, China's desert remediation efforts also focused on economic benefits. By planting pothos trees alongside commercial crops like sistanchis, local communities gain both environmental protection and economic opportunities. This pragmatic approach has lifted millions of Chinese citizens out of poverty through new industries like ecotourism and specialized desert agriculture. So why would these experiences matter for Africa? The Sahel region faces similar challenges: advancing deserts, water scarcity, and the need to support local economies. Now you may ask, but can technologies and methods developed for Chinese deserts work in African conditions? And how exactly is China transferring this knowledge? Well, this is what we will find out next. But before that, if you are finding this information valuable so far, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. China's participation in Africa's Great Green Wall Initiative didn't happen overnight. It began in 2014 when President Xi Jinping announced the Belt and Road Initiative, China's massive infrastructure investment program spanning multiple continents. Shortly after, Africa's environmental challenges appeared on Beijing's radar as strategic opportunities for cooperation. By 2016, the Chinese Academy of Sciences signed a formal memorandum of understanding with the Pan-African Agency of the Great Green Wall. This agreement created the framework for scientific cooperation. The first concrete step came with the establishment of the Joint Research Center for the Great Green Wall in 2018. Based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, this center brings together Chinese scientists with experts from across the Sahel. Here, they analyze soil samples, test drought-resistant plant varieties, and develop land restoration techniques tailored to African conditions. But China didn't stop there. In 2021, Beijing pledged $2.3 billion specifically for Great Green Wall projects as part of a larger $60 billion commitment to African development. So why would China invest so heavily in an African environmental project? The official explanation focuses on mutual benefits. China gains international recognition as a climate leader while demonstrating the practical application of its environmental technologies. African nations receive funding and expertise for a project vital to their future. The cooperation extends beyond government-to-government relations. Chinese companies now operate demonstration sites across the Sahel region, showing local farmers techniques for sustainable agriculture in semi-arid environments. Chinese agricultural experts work alongside African farmers to implement water-saving techniques developed in similar climates in Western China. Take sand fixation, for example. When Chinese engineers first assessed many Sahel regions, they found traditional methods couldn't cope with the scale of sand movement. Chinese teams introduced a technique developed in the Sahara Desert that uses straw checkerboard barriers. These simple structures, made from local materials, reduce wind speed by 50% and trap moving sand. In Mauritania, these methods helped stabilize 50,000 hectares of shifting dunes that threaten to engulf entire communities. Water management presents another critical challenge. China's contribution includes solar-powered micro-irrigation systems that reduce water usage by up to 70% compared to traditional methods. In northern Senegal, these systems now support community gardens that grow vegetables year-round, using a fraction of the water previously required. But technology transfer goes beyond equipment. Since 2018, more than 200 African agricultural technicians have received specialized training at China's Gansu Research Institute for Water Conservation in desert farming techniques. These programs focus on practical skills: how to select drought-resistant crop varieties, implement water harvesting systems, and maintain soil fertility under extreme conditions. This knowledge transfer works both ways. Chinese researchers also learn from traditional African land management practices. The integration of livestock into reforestation efforts, for instance, builds on centuries-old pastoral techniques developed by Sahel communities. Perhaps the most significant aspect of China's technical assistance is its focus on making technologies locally sustainable. In Ethiopia's Tigray region, Chinese experts established a manufacturing facility where local workers build water-saving irrigation equipment using designs adapted for African conditions. This creates jobs while ensuring maintenance and repairs don't depend on imported parts. However, questions remain about the long-term sustainability of some technologies. Will African communities maintain complex systems once Chinese technical advisors leave? And how accessible are these technologies to the poorest farmers who might benefit most? The answers vary by country and project. In Niger, pilot projects show promising results with 85% of irrigation systems remaining operational 3 years after installation. Meanwhile, In Mali, maintenance challenges have limited the effectiveness of some more complex interventions. What's clear is that the technical collaboration between China and Africa is not about parachuting in ready-made solutions. It's an ongoing process of adaptation and knowledge exchange shaped by local needs and conditions. For all its progress, China's involvement in the Great Green Wall raises significant concerns. Some question whether environmental cooperation serves as a mask for resource extraction. The Sahel contains vast deposits of uranium, gold, and rare earth minerals essential for green technology manufacturing, sectors where China holds dominant market positions. A 2022 analysis by the Center for Strategic and International Studies found that 83% of China's African infrastructure investments occur in countries with significant mineral resources. Is this merely coincidence or strategic calculation? When Chinese companies simultaneously sign mining concessions and fund restoration projects in the same regions, these questions intensify. Environmental impacts from some Chinese-backed projects contradict stated conservation goals. In northern Nigeria, Chinese-funded irrigation projects increased crop production, but also accelerated groundwater depletion. Local environmental activists warn that reservoirs are emptying faster than they can refill, creating long-term water security risks despite the short-term benefits. Cultural and knowledge transfer challenges persist. Technologies developed for Chinese deserts sometimes fail in African contexts. A 2023 assessment found that 40% of Chinese-introduced plant species underperformed compared to native alternatives in Mali and Senegal. Because these species were not adapted to local soil conditions and rainfall patterns. Political complications add another layer of difficulty. The Great Green Wall spans 11 countries with different governance systems, technical capacities, and security situations. Chinese agencies often struggle to coordinate across these varied contexts. Projects progress rapidly in stable countries like Ethiopia and Senegal, while stalling in conflict-affected regions like Mali. Land rights issues create additional friction. Traditional communal land management systems across the region sometimes clash with the more centralized approaches favored in Chinese projects. When restoration efforts restrict grazing access without adequate alternatives, pastoral communities suffer economic hardship. Perhaps most concerning is the question of long-term sustainability. Will these projects continue once Chinese funding and technical support withdraw? Many Great Green Wall interventions require ongoing maintenance and technical expertise that local communities may struggle to provide independently. Chinese officials respond to these criticisms by pointing to project outcomes. In regions where Chinese approaches have been implemented, vegetation coverage has increased by an average of 15.7%, compared to 3.4% in areas using traditional methods alone. These measurable results suggest genuine environmental benefits beyond resource acquisition motives. The relationship between China and African nations remains complex, balancing genuine assistance with strategic interests. As researchers from the Africa Center for Strategic Studies note, African countries must approach these partnerships with clear priorities and strong governance to ensure environmental goals remain central, not secondary to resource extraction. So, what do you think? Should African nations embrace Chinese environmental assistance or approach it with caution? And what responsibility do wealthy nations have to support projects like the Great Green Wall that benefit our shared planet? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching. See you in our next video.